Welcome to Seekers and Finders, the podcast where we explore the infinite pathways to truth, creativity, and connection.
When you really see the truth, you suddenly realize there's no more need for forgiveness. And it just hit me like, what? You don't forgive anything anymore? There's nothing to be forgiven? And again, it was like, oh, wow, that is a bigger truth. That's a bigger reality. That's a bigger love, than a bigger intelligence than any concept I could have had. What matters is knowing that there is no mistake. Everything you are doing right now, everything you are experiencing, everything you are being is right. And within that is the complete natural wholeness. And once we get to taste that and savor it, it's amazing how much less pain we'll cause ourselves.
Lisa Carillo, she's written a book, An Unprincipled Life, Living from the Unknown. I personally want to find out what that's all about, living from the unknown. Lisa, welcome. We were just talking about you, as a matter of fact. And I said today we're going to be talking to Lisa Carillo, the author of, this is her latest book, An Unprincipled Life, Living from the Unknown. I said, I want to find out what that's all about. And I'm sure a lot of other people do too. So, hi, Lisa, and welcome to Seekers and Finders podcast.
Great to see you.
Yeah, it's fun.
Lisa, you have no principles?
Nope.
No more.
How can we invite her? How can we invite her on the show if she has no principles?
No,
No.
because she doesn't need principles because she's enlightened. See, we're going to talk about that. The principles, you don't need them anymore. But let's talk about that, Lisa. Let's talk about this unprincipled. But before we do this.
I watched some of your videos online, Lisa. By the way, hello. You're very lovely to see you.
Nice to actually meet you.
Your background.
Yeah.
Are you in Hawaii somewhere or in some Polynesian island, or you just use that as your fill?
Just a poster on the back, but I do live 1 mile from the ocean, and it is kind of similar to this.
Awesome.
In Northern California.
So what do you need realization for if you've got that?
Exactly.
I know. All right, Gary, it's all yours, baby.
Okay, so listen, I was looking forward to talking to Lisa, not only about her book, but about her spiritual journey. And I think it goes back to Landmark Forum. But before we go into this, Lisa, what do you want to talk about? Give us a little background and let's take it from like what do you want to talk about?
Sure. Well, just, I had that more sudden experience, but then when it's somewhat dimmed, I got to have the experience of more deliberate unraveling. And I feel like that's something that's accessible to anybody, that what we are is always here. And it's just a dropping away to see it. And while tuning into it and feeling it is one practice, but there's another practice of just helping things drop away. And that's what I feel like my books really excel at, is helping to see how to let things drop away.
Now, here's an interesting thing. You said deliberate unraveling. So in other words, what you're saying, so there are things that, let's say, we as seekers can do to hurry this process along. So let's talk about the deliberate unraveling as opposed to just letting things happen as they happen.
Right. Exactly. So usually, like, this is kind of a model that I found helpful. There's some point, maybe 2 or 3 years old, when something happens and there's a crystallization of an idea, I don't want that. And with that comes a strategy of what I'm going to do to make what I want to happen. And some people's strategy is pleasing other people, some people's being aggressive towards other people. The strategies vary across the board. Some people is by being really patient and laid back and observant. Some people is by being controlling on top of everything. It's anywhere. But once we take that strategy, it installs a filter into our experience. And that filter becomes one of the main things that prevents us from just sensing this natural flow of what we are, because we're constantly evaluating instead of sensing. And so these different techniques are things that relax the defenses, help us feel the natural benevolence there is, so we don't have to have this caution, and we can allow and trust that this thing that's constantly coming forth in us is benevolent.
And so what I'm getting now, and from earlier, we were joking around about being unprincipled. So what I'm hearing is that these principles that we might have are just those kind of filters that are blocking this natural flow of goodness or natural condition or whatever you can call it. So this is where ordinary people would say, oh no, I must have principles because I have to do good in the world, or whatever the principle is, or whatever it is. But this in turn, according to what you're saying, is really a barrier to the natural flow. And so that's hence the title, Unprincipled Life. So I think that's a nice reversal of what people normally think. And let's face it, we have both discovered each in our own way as we go down the spiritual path that that some of the things that we encounter would seem, on the surface at least, antithetical to common sense or common whatever consensual reality. And so I think this is one of them. It's a good point, and I love people who shake things up, and you're one of those people.
Absolutely.
Well, I'd like to shake it up for a second. Okay.
Shake it up, baby. Twist and shout.
First of all, we've been making it up since the beginning. We had this ignorance about us. We couldn't figure out what was going on, and we made it up in order to move along and survive and all of that. So, it's like Moses went up the mountain and came back down with 2 tablets. Well, they say he had 3 and he dropped one on the way down, but he came down with 2 tablets with these laws, okay? Now, if I was Moses and I saw this group of people carrying on like crazy, I'd sit up there and say, you know what, I'm just going to tell them that this God created this stuff and bring it down and say, the Lord said, okay? And the first 3 commandments that the Lord said was, pray to me only. That's it. If you don't, I'm going to, wipe you out. But we made it up. Like we're making everything up. And for me, because first of all, I did a little deep dive on your stuff, and your whole vibrational thing and your energy thing is exactly where I'm at. And we've had, guests on our program that kind of like poo-pawed my vibrational thing. They were Advaita Vedantists in the modern day age, and so they don't. There was no practice involved. There was no meditation involved. They just woke up one morning and they were enlightened and all of that. But our culture, our whole species, has spent so many of the millennium that we're here digging ourselves deeper into this concept of what life is, and your unraveling is really an important way, because if we just release everything and realize that everything is spirit, now how can we touch it? What's the program? Instead of just being involved in our own self, So that's why I'm interested in talking to you, because you kind of really touched on it in a very tactile way. You feel the vibration inside. You've got that heart center thing going on, and that's the path that I'd like to follow. So the floor is yours for the rest of the time.
Yeah, I really resonate with what you're saying. There are moments when it's like life breaks open and it's too good, too big. We suddenly realize, oh my gosh, the idea I had is too small a box. And, I started in Christianity, and there were moments when suddenly I'd see, oh my gosh, boy, when I was little, 50 years ago, Christians didn't think you could have gay people. And when I got, oh, God made gay people because he delights or she delights, it delights, we delight in all the expressions. For me, that was one of the first ahas. It's like, oh, yes, now that's the bigger God. That's the one that I can feel doesn't put any limitations. And it just kept continuing over and over and over, where things would just blast open. And then like another time, somebody said to me, when you really see the truth, you suddenly realize there's no more need for forgiveness. And it just hit me like, what? You don't forgive anything anymore? There's nothing to be forgiven? And again, it was like, oh, wow, that is a bigger truth. That's a bigger reality. That's a bigger love than a bigger intelligence than any concept I could have had. And so as those things happen, it's an entry point into what we already are. We're not arriving anywhere. We're just letting go of what we've been putting as a conceptual veils in front of what we actually are.
Well, yeah, for me, um, I see source as consciousness. Now, beyond consciousness, there is, and I'm not sure, it is part of my belief system, there is this state of oneness that we can eventually become part of. But as long as we're awake, walking around, even in the transmission of death, there's consciousness. Consciousness is the big source that we're talking about. And consciousness is having an experience through all of us.
Right. I mean, it's what we are. And this consciousness, it's in rocks. I mean, it's everywhere. I actually got to feel it in a rock at one point, and this sense of gravity holding me down was like 100 times than what I feel, as in a human body. It was amazing. It was like, it was like, wow, this is what awareness inside of a rock or consciousness inside of a rock is experiencing. That was the main thing in that sudden opening I had. There were no more thoughts at all that generated an idea of a personal Lisa. There was a body moving forward, doing what it needed to do, but the decisions, they just flow through. And I could see how that has always been the case. I mean, it's always been when I couldn't make up my mind, I'd pretend I was making one decision and then pretend I was making the other decision and see which one felt most aligned. I couldn't ever use my head to come up with a final decision. It was like, oh, something in me knows. And when that knowing arrives, the decision is made. That's like how it has always happened. So I was able to just flow through that without all the story about why am I doing this? Who needs what do I need? There was no story about it. I was just moving into the next thing and the next thing. And it turns out that's all we're ever doing. We just add on the extra story.
So did you move from your out of your head into your the connection between your heart and your solar plexus area, driven by um, the uh, innate higher self inside? Is that what happened? That the noise inside your mind kind of like happens when you go into stillness and meditation, and it just start to quiet down, and you started to be driven by this inner being that was not telling you, you're this, that, or the other thing.
Right? I could see that I've always been driven by the inner being. It's not like I started to be driven. We are all in one inner being driving all of us. And but we just add on stories about why, why so-and-so should be with that person right now and shouldn't be with that person right now, doing this right now and not. We just add the stories, but exactly. And I just stopped adding the stories and felt that inner being moving in that's always there, that has always.
Okay, but we're talking about your awakening now. So I know you realize that you've always been driven by this inner being. However, before you had that realization, um, when your mind was driving you, when your thoughts were what was making up your life, before that awakening happened, what was the turning point where one day it or 1 week or 1 month or whatever it was, it just started to move from your mind down into your heart center, and that little tickle of inner being inside said, wait, it's me. You've got me now. I'm here. How did
Right.
that happen? That's what I'm asking.
Okay, very good. Well, I'm just going to slightly rephrase what happened. It wasn't really that anything moved from my head down. It was always down. I was just adding a costume with my head, and I stopped adding the costume. But so the movement was always there. It just was being covered up. So what happened? I had been in a practice, it was a tantra practice of enjoying movement as it arrived without any expectation. And I could see that whenever I put expectation, the sensation diminished greatly.
Mm.
So it became this instinct of, oh, okay, don't get lost in expectation, feel the sensation. That's how sensation builds, that's how enjoyment builds. So I was at a silent retreat and I wanted to be enlightened. And it was with Adyashanti. I noticed 2 days in or 3 days in, oh my gosh, I'm so focused on what I'm hoping, which is causing me to evaluate myself, that I'm not 100% here. And I knew immediately once I saw it with that clarity that that was a waste. I mean, I was wasting the retreat. So I said, okay, give up any expectation whatsoever. I'm just going to be here. And it was a 5-day retreat. So I I let go the whole time of the retreat. The meditations were feeling being entering into this mind body. So I was feeling the source of awareness in this mind body. So I just kept doing that. But the next morning, the thoughts were gone that created individual Lisa. It's just at the end of the retreat, when I went to drive my car, I was wondering if I'd be able to drive because there was just no thoughts to do it. And there's no problem. I could drive just fine. But yeah, I just saw that the mind had always projected about, I don't know, 12 different possibilities anytime there looked to be a decision point. And it would project those possibilities, and then the decision would come through, and then the mind would crystallize its thoughts along the thought pattern that aligned with the decision. So it was so much work to try to own decisions. It was a mess and so that efforting stopped.
Our guru, Gary and I, that we followed, Sri Chinmoy, the one line that he had that I walked away with after we left the center was no expectation, no frustration. I said, wow, that's really, what a great line that is. It always rang in my mind. No expectation, no frustration. So, but we all have expectation about something. We're all working on it all the time. The concept of being a God-realized soul and reaching that pinnacle that is, one with the absolute. Our guru had it to some degree. We could sit in a hall with him or sit with him privately in his house, and he emanated this vibrational aura that basically consumed you and brought you up, brought your consciousness up, brought you up. I mean, I guess some people, if you wanted it, it was there for you. If you denied it, then it didn't matter how much he tried. But there are all these God men that are supposedly realized And yet they're still human beings. We're still all working on it. I've yet to see one. I mean, Ramana Maharshi died of cancer. Uh, Ramakrishna died of cancer. They all went through these pain bodies. Maybe it was absorbing karma from all their disciples or whatever. But it's still a work in progress. Nobody is, there yet. They're not in that space. And, we try and find those people to follow. What is this unknown that you're talking about? You have your book about the unknown. I'm really curious about that. I didn't mean to go off on a tangent, but
No, I love it. And if I have your permission, I'd like to ask you a question. I don't mean it in any kind of an affront.
you're our guest. You have every permission possible. Go ahead.
Okay, great. So, what is the principle that you believe must be achieved for someone to be whatever you're describing as arrived versus what anybody else is? What is the principle that you have there?
Well, that's interesting. Because I know that there is no arrival place. Um, I've been working on it for a long time. We all wanted, when we were with the guru, one of our goals, quote unquote, was to try and get as high as possible to God realization as we possibly could. Transcendence, absorption into the one God. And then when you're young, you've got this fantasy about it, which is what we all did. We were in our 20s, most of us. And then when we finally said, this isn't working for us, and we left the path and went into the outer world, as the guru used to call it, we realized, hey, this is just part of the thing. We're here, we're having the experience. It is what it is. So, what do I believe? I believe that we do the best we can. We try and become aware of the most we can. And based on each individual's personal, whoever we are, we manifest what it is we're supposed to manifest in this life. And when we die, we move on. Maybe we go back into the soul's world. I've had an experience with my soul in the soul's world. So I know there is that connection there with this higher, not only my inner being. Okay, so I do believe there's a thread between my inner being, who I've already found inside me, who tells me when I'm full of shit and that kind of thing. And I've seen the thread between that inner being and the essence that I am in the inner world. And I've had it in meditation. So that's my experience. I have nothing else. And everybody has just their experience. So I'm not looking for anything that's a group, get together that we can all achieve. That's why I was talking about consciousness earlier, because I think that as long as there is awakening, there's consciousness, that it's just having all these amazing experiences that we should just let it have without kind of trying to stop it. But, of course, the ego wants to do its own thing. And, it's me, I want to achieve this, I want to achieve that. But I finally come to the understanding that that's not what it's all about. And I'm just here trying to do the best I can and be as awake as much as I can. I don't know how much longer I'm going to live. I'm going to be 79. Maybe I'll live another 10 years, maybe another one. So I'm kind of writing down all the things I'm going to ask my essence, and, can you do this? Can you do that? And what's going to happen? It's going to say, no, whatever it is, it's going to be. So just, yeah.
That is beautiful. I'm going to do a quick aside and then go back to what I thought was the main thread of what you were just saying. But my experience is that I discovered the part of me that chose to be here now, because, to try to pretend you can choose something else, but you don't even know who chose this and why they chose it. It's nice to know who chose this and why they chose it. Then it's easier to say, okay, what could be next? And in my case, it turns out that until I find all of life as play, I'm not finished here. that's how it turned out for me. But okay, so it sounds like at one level that anything you're doing here is divinely designed and desired, while at the same time you think there's an arriving to some place that will be more, I don't know, blissful or more loving or more, I'm not quite sure, or more you in one sensing the one. And those, my experience is that really it's actually just one experience, that when we're 100% knowing that this human experience right now is divinely designed and desired, or, by the universe, by the infinite, by our timeless being, whatever, then all of a sudden there's a sinking into it with zero resistance. And we do know that we are the infinite timeless. And whether or not that comes with bliss or feeling like a loving person, that varies. But so it almost sounds like you think you say you think they're the same thing, but then you still want to reach for something. And that's an interesting paradox that you're conceptually putting yourself into.
My mind is looking at that, but I also understand deeply that we're all just having a spiritual experience. However, I have had other things happen to me that were, if you want to call them achievements, that's what my mind is doing. But I've had states of bliss in meditation. I've had all of those mystical experiences. I've had deep experience with unconditional love. So deep that this being sitting here in unconditional love would just open up into this vast array of oneness inside his body. And all the molecules and atoms that are there just become one with all the other molecules and atoms. And you realize it's all about that unconditional love that you can feel. So, me personally, like I said, I'm very tactile. I have to feel things. Okay. I don't think. Gary has brought me back from being out there during some of our podcasts because I'll just go out because I don't hear words. I feel stuff. If my mind tells me, oh, you can expect this, you can expect that, I understand that, but I'm still human. I can't get away from it that quickly. But that's why we have people like you on, because you're the one type of person that's going to resound with me, Now, I don't know how Gary's going to react. Gary is more succinct. He's very intelligent in that way. He's got all the questions down. He's always been that way. And I admire him for that. I really do. And that's why we're together, because he's holding this thing up with his intelligence. And I'm sitting here like this wayfarer person kind of floating, I've got this tether that's holding me onto this chair while I'm talking to you. But I'm feeling it now, Lisa. I mean, I'm feeling this oneness with you. And even though whatever you want to say about me and my expectations, this and that, it doesn't matter. There's something very tight and innate. And I bring it back to this. Everybody's got a kind of vibration that goes with other people. If you don't feel good about somebody when you walk into a room, you just stay away from them. But then there are other people that charm you, they've got charisma, they attract you. And your energy is kind of like the same, So
So beautiful that you're tapping into the preciousness. And I could be angry with my husband, and it's precious because I get to experience being forgiven. And it's precious. Like, how else could the infinite have the experience of getting forgiven? I mean, no way, unless this little mind body decided to get angry and get forgiven. It's so precious. And how could the infinite experience confusion? It doesn't matter how we're showing up, even if we're doing something catastrophic. There's a certain thread of preciousness because it's the infinite getting to experience it through us. I love being on the planet right now. I think it is going great. It really is amazing
Yeah.
because there are so many people who are waking up, and the ugliness that people, ugliness, whatever, humans would call ugly, that people might have suppressed before is getting expressed to get resolved, which is exactly what happened in my body. So of course, that's what's going to happen as a collective as well. And the capacity to love everything. I mean, there were times when you could do any little thing and be ostracized. And no, there's an amazing welcoming and curiosity that has come within humanity and this great awakening, so many people touching in. So I love that being with you, really the words are just an excuse. Like all that's ever happening is a dance. We're in a choreography and we intermingle with each other. And then we add words to make an excuse of why we're together.
Right.
But
Right.
we're just energetically resonating, and we spend the exact right amount of time, and then we move on and we resonate there, and or conflict here and conflict there. There are dance moves that are very conflictual moves. And then we pass on to the next one. You're right. It's an energetic fabric. And we just add the words because we like to have a reason. That's it. That's the only reason we need the words.
Right. And it is a dance. I mean, with the other podcast we had recently about music and spirituality, we were talking about waves. For me, in this part of me, this is what I feel. I mean, it's constant. Okay. It moves me out of sync and into sync, and out of sync and into sync. And the best thing I can do is when I go out of sync, just let that out of sync thing happen and just wait until you get back into sync again. And I can feel myself being bombarded all the time because I'm a bit of an empath. So whenever I'm with somebody, whatever they're feeling, it's like it, it's bombarding me. So I try and stay with people who are in good moods, because it's not fun to be around somebody for me that's, not in a good mood. I take on their whole thing, and that's what I'm trying to get rid of. So, Gary, bring us back to Earth, please. I know we have questions for Lisa.
I think Lisa has done a great job in bringing us back. Every time she has spoken, she has brought us back to quote unquote Earth, which is simply bringing us back to this, what's going on now, and not what went on, in the past and might go on in some future incarnation or whatever. So I think that's kind of the main principle that I get from not only Lisa, what I have read in her book, but just from her presence. And so this, to me, is the most uh, important thing. It's like, what's happening now? So I'm going to put little Lisa on the spot. What's happening now, Lisa, for you?
There's so much love that is natural, effortless, and a certainty of benevolence that just feels like, how could I add? How could I contribute? It's the love that's existing naturally between us. And yes, of course, we've got a lot of mental agreement, but there's also this cherishing. And I can tell that if we start to investigate, I'm sure we'd have differences and it wouldn't matter. It just wouldn't matter. Like, okay, yes, there's just a preciousness, like you were just discussing the empath situation. When I felt pain, I will feel, somebody else. I'm feeling somebody else is struggling. I work in a hospital, so I get to experience this a lot. I will feel tightness in my gut or tightness in my heart or tightness in my throat as I sink in with them. But I have also noticed that when those experiences have happened in my life, they have brought forth fruit. I've actually benefited from every single one of them. So instead of being drained, I actually end up feeling that I get to be the knower in the room, that this isn't for naught. And so I can have an underlying joy most of the time when I'm encountering somebody who is, in despair, because I know that despair will lift because it's not what we are. I know what we are so well. It is so benevolent. I know this that we are. I don't have to put concepts on it. I just know it from feeling it, sensing it. And so whatever anybody else is experiencing, this that we are is still in charge at every experience. And it's such a relief. It's such a relief.
Did you ever see your glow have an effect on someone else that was in pain? So in other words, when you came into the room, your aura kind of brought the pain body out of itself for a second, and the person that was in distress kind of felt better, you know? Have you had that experience?
I have more from people telling me that they were feeling it. Have you had that experience? I imagine you have.
Yes. But I mean, that's part of the um I think that's one of the upsides of waking up and realizing you're a spiritual being, because if you can emanate that sense, that glow. um I I live in Vermont now. I used to live in New Jersey, my wife and I. We're professional photographers, so we did a lot of events and a lot of weddings, and we have to be very social and gregarious with, the guests at the weddings, so they feel very comfortable and natural. And I found that when I came to Vermont, I wasn't doing that anymore. I had dropped that persona, and I was just feeling the beauty of Vermont, which I didn't get the same feeling in New Jersey because there's so much noise and flatness and all this kind of stuff going on. But in Vermont here, it's so physically beautiful, as you probably feel when you're in California that way, that I started to release this whole thing about, me having to, you know, be on all the time. And I just started to relax. And then I was finding that when I would walk down the street, people would just smile at me. And I wasn't intending anything. I was just walking down the street, minding my business, having a good time, going to the store, and somebody would just feel like they wanted to smile at me, and I'd smile back, and it was the most beautiful kind of feeling, because I couldn't feel that in New Jersey, and I grew up in New York. People walk down the street and they don't look at anybody, and you know what I'm saying. So there is that moment where if you just let it go and you just be that spirit being that you are, you can help somebody without opening your mouth, just walking into a room. So I'm assuming, since you work in a hospital, you've had that experience.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love the way you describe it. I guess I've had people at least report to me that they felt different when I came in. And I love the way you described our caution. It's just one simple thing. It's human caution to try to not experience something. That's it. That's the only thing that separates us from noticing what we already are. We have a caution against certain experiences. And once we actually observe it and its consequences, its lifetime is set. It will it will diminish and diminish and diminish because it's causing us too much pain. To have a caution against any experience is painful.
Caution is so contracting, it's just like pulling inside. There's no expansion there.
Right. And some people are cautious because they don't want to be mean. Or some people are
Um,
cautious because they don't want to be vulnerable.
right.
It's all different kinds of ways you can be cautious. But when we catch ourselves, it's like, oh, yeah, that's right. And so just bathing in, oh, yeah, every time that I thought something was negative, it turned out for positive. Just keep rehearsing that, rehearsing it. Then the caution starts to realize, wow, there's nothing left to be cautious about.
And by the way, speaking of caution, I think based on what Lisa has just said, we could call this book could have been called Living an Uncautious Life, because it's all about removing what we're calling caution, those filters, those masks. So this is a great book. I want everybody to buy it.
This unknown, can you expound upon the unknown that we're all talking about here?
Yes. And lots of people will confuse it. So it's easier at first, I think, to say what it's not. And there's an idea of bliss or idea of agreement, an idea of peace that is actually just a box. It's a comfort zone. And when we get out of this comfort zone, we think we've gotten off the path. But anything that is a box, whether it's a defined idea of what the path should be or defined path of what the idea of what the path shouldn't be, it's still a box. The unknown is when we've thrown away the box altogether and we're just discovering, oh, this is what the universe wants. This moment too. Oh, this is what the universe wants. This moment too. This moment of confusion, this moment of pain, this moment of disagreement. The universe wants this. So I had a very good friend. We were actually engaged for 3 years. And he broke up with me. He was actually 27 years older than me. He broke up with me and started dating people who sometimes he met them because they started their career as a call girl, or they were 20 somethings who were not their match was not what people would think of a mature person. and I'm so glad that he broke up with me to pursue those relationships. There were moments where I felt pain about it, but I'm so grateful for the exact amount of time I had with him and the amount of time I got to have with my next boyfriends and then ultimately my current husband. I'm really grateful that he got to be with these women. It was fascinating to hear the stories of how they interacted. A woman from Korea who had a child and a mom she was trying to support in Korea, and then a woman from Russia and parents there. And the way that they were interacting, it was clear that this was not a accidental relating. In fact, one of them even had a slight, I don't know, maybe mental disorder similar to what his mom had had. So these were on purpose things. So it doesn't matter whether there's a breakup, there's a war, whatever it is, and this too. This is part of the design. This too. So that's my first book. I went through a bunch of practices of taking our thoughts that are all around our caution and figuring out ways to help them dismantle, challenging them in different games to help them dismantle. And then I realized that people weren't going all the way to the deepest thoughts. So that's why I did this book. I want them to see, no, I mean all of the shoulds, every single should. I should be happy. I should be nice. I should be kind. I should be loving. I should be peaceful. The world should be peaceful. The world, every should ends up disappearing in this dance that ultimately just keeps bringing forth deeper connection with what we are. That's what happens whenever you go
Lisa,
through pain.
I want to add one. I want to add one of those shoulds. One of the biggest ones. I should be spiritual. Oh, please. Oh, please spare me.
Exactly. Exactly. There's not a single should. Somebody else should mature more. Somebody else should be more spiritual. Somebody else should become whatever. No, really. What we are wants every experience that's happening right now.
Well, let me ask you this. So
Like discovery.
wasn't there a point where you, after your boyfriend broke up with you and he started dating all of these strange women, that you said to yourself, I'm glad I didn't marry him because I found out that he's not where I want to be. Didn't that ever occur to you?
It didn't because he had done that before I met him. So I was already aware that he had these two parts inside of himself. And, it was fun. Actually, we went to a BDSM conference together. That was very interesting.
What kind
I,
of conference?
Bondage and domination, sadomasochism.
yes, yes,
Wow.
yes. It
This
was
is not an
fascinating.
R-rated program. We got to be careful here.
No, but it's like Lisa says, this too is Brahman. See that there's nothing left out. So it doesn't not about
Absolutely.
it's not about R-rated or whatever. This too is Brahman. It's
Right.
all part of the one seamless thing. And this is where I think Lisa's brilliance is that she addresses just it. Everything's included. It's not like and all the shoulds have to go. So I want to hear more about that conference actually.
Okay. Well, what I think was a particularly enlightening experience there. I got caned. I had a lot of different experiences, but I went to someone to get caned, and um, so we had the whatever's the password, so I could make it stop. So that's an exception to real life if you were to get caned. But I made a commitment I was not going to use that word. So the pain starts coming, and my brain starts going on with, why are you doing this? Do you want to do this? Are you a crazy person? Like questioning me. And then, are you ashamed? Well, I mean, do you not think yourself worthy? Why are you enduring this? And the pain gets stronger and stronger and stronger. And then it starts attacking him. Well, there's a bad person out there. Why can't he stop? Doesn't he see that that's enough? I mean, that has been enough. Is he enjoying this that much? And then the pain starts to be so much and it's still going. And then there's oh, the, oh, like, oh, it's just going to go on. Like, I don't know when this is going to stop. And there's struggle of any sort. It's not getting me anywhere. Struggle with myself, struggle with him. It's just going to keep going. I can't stop it. And there was this just pain and pain, pain, and then it stopped. And there was this big
Wait, the
relief.
caning stopped or the pain stopped? What
The
stopped?
caning stopped. The caning stopped.
And you didn't use the stop word.
No, I didn't.
Okay.
So then there was this flood of relief, and then this like I felt like I was like my skin had been taken off. Like there was just raw. I was just totally raw, totally open. I wanted to cuddle up with my partner, which he did with me for a little bit, and then he just started talking to people, and I was still in this very raw state and very present with the rawness. Like the rawness was so overwhelming. I was just totally present in this rawness. And then it eventually just kind of went back into normal life, but it was just this rawness for a long time.
I'm just curious, what made it stop? I mean, in other words, there was a point there where there was no stopping and then it just stopped. How come it stopped?
Exactly. What was it that moved him to stop? Something in him said, I'm done. Like he had gotten all the joy out of it. I had gotten all the pain out of it. There was nowhere more that I was going to go. I had gotten to total broadness. There was no more where he was going to go. He could felt it was complete.
what do you think about the idea that we all have an inner moral fabric that there is a right and wrong about things that we can do either to ourselves or each other. And there is a basic moral fabric that there's that line that some people can dive deep under, commit heinous crimes, murders such as that, and not feel any kind of feeling about it. And there are those who know that they can only go so far and should go no further because it just doesn't seem like the right thing to do. And that right thing to do is part of that moral fabric, which I don't want to make it into a religious thing, but there seems to be something that's innate in everybody, yet there's also a darkness that's innate in everybody. What do you think about that?
Well, I don't really think about that. I do have senses. I do have senses. Like, I really can't philosophize about it. Just I don't have that capacity.
But
But
it does exist. I mean, it does exist in everybody
a
where,
moral fabric, I can't find it. I can't find what I would call a moral fabric. What I can find is our inner being. And it feels its fullest. It feels its freest. It feels its brightness the most when it's doing things that are loving and harmonious. But there's, there's a desire for every experience. And so when we're doing something that isn't aligned with that, I can't find that we've broken anything or that we've cut ourselves off from this beingness, but we have shaped it in a way where it doesn't feel its brightest. It doesn't feel its connection. It feels constricted. But that's this being wanting to have that experience. So it hasn't gone against anything, but it has shaped itself contrary, I would say.
right. But how do um, you get angry?
Yes.
How
Yes.
deep? How deep is your anger?
See, well, I recently I got that angry in a dream. It was amazing. It was maybe more anger than I've ever experienced in this awaking person. And it was a really good experience because in that moment I contacted a level of desire that I felt like I learned so much from getting that angry in my dream. I mean, I was trembling. I couldn't, it was almost orgasmic. My body was rippling with anger, but I felt this contact with, I know what I know, where I'm going, what I want. And yeah, we have these wants that are, trying to be comfortable or secure or whatever that I don't, there, that's one kind of thing. But there is, what is our destiny? Destiny sounds like, it has to meet some standard or something. It doesn't have to do that at all. But there's what we are, what our life journey is that is constantly pulling us forward. And when we are deeply synced in with that, we just feel so alive. We feel so real. We know that what we're doing in this moment is what's right for us to be doing. That
Okay.
So that's
Yeah.
what I think deep anger can get you in contact with.
Right. Definitely. So I noticed in your bio that you were involved with the Landmark Forum.
Yes,
Um, can you talk about that a little bit because it seems to be where this whole thing started, your spiritual journey?
great. So the Landmark Forum, there was definitely a spiritual knowing since I was a little girl. I think I shared in the book about being in bed. I was 3 years old. This being would come on me at night. I would be terrified that I was going to suffocate because it felt like I couldn't breathe. And I would forget it in the morning. But one night I decided I have to open my eyes. I have to see what is this thing that's terrifying me. And it was invisible. So then I knew no adult could help me because they can't see the invisible things. So I decided, okay, so this is really up to me. It's me and this invisible, what feels like suffocator. And I knew I wasn't stronger than it. So then suddenly what came was, but has it killed you? Has it killed you? And it actually never even really got that close. I mean, I felt I couldn't take a deep breath, but I was okay. And fear went away. It was like, oh, okay. And I think that kind of thing happened in my life. So it's not like the landmark forum was my first, but it was the first scene that I got that was pretty clear because I got that I'm not my thoughts. I didn't really get 100% what I am. That's what came later, but I definitely got I'm not my thoughts. And I could play with thoughts because they are tools. They don't reflect reality at all. Really. Thoughts
Right.
don't even come close to reflecting reality. And once I got that reality is this, and thoughts are just dust. That was a big, big opening.
And the other thing was the Finders group. How did you find the Finders group?
I was in a meditation group, and a couple people in the meditation group had done the Finders course. And then my husband, it sounded very interesting to me, but at that point I already knew what I was, so what we are. So I wasn't seeking anymore, but it just sounded like this great community. My husband, on the other hand, wanted to do the program, so he did the 17-week. And then a couple years later, when COVID happened, then there was the 45 days. And I was like, oh, wow, this is a really easy way to get into the community. And I'm curious what's in the program. And I did it and had a blast. It was really fun.
So now your relationship with your husband, as far as your spiritual a path, your road, are you on similar paths? How does it work in the house from a day to day?
I love the role that plays in our spiritual growth. I feel like it is one of the most cutting edges. I can go on and on about relationship. In our case, Daniel is more of an energetic person, not in that he necessarily feels energy. He doesn't organize his thoughts that much, so he just ends up flowing with the energy. Um, he's a much more spontaneous person, much less organized person, and he doesn't even know why he's doing things, but he's always doing the perfect thing that I need. Like, I needed to confront some attachment issues I had, and he kept saying no to me. He thought he was saying no for some other reason, but I discovered, oh, the universe wants me to confront these attachment issues. And I discovered love in the deepest way as I did that. So I needed him to say no to me to have that happen. And the same thing with um, he's less organized in how he keeps the house. I'm not super organized anymore, but a little bit more than he is. And that has been this wonderful way of letting me just feel into what really matters to me. What more can I let go of? I mean, it's just so while yes, we're on a very similar spiritual path, um, our practices tend to be different. And so we are able to discuss with each other really well. And I don't I do not contribute as far as ideas of practices for him or anything like that because his are just so different than mine, which is just an interesting side note. I think when you find a teacher who has a similar ego structure that you have, it can help in the letting go because they had to let go of some of the same cautions. And so I just hit that in as a small thing on a side note.
Do you meditate at home?
Oh yeah, I
Okay,
enjoy
so
it.
meditation is part of your practice.
Yes.
Okay. So one of our guests who was on about they promote non-duality, and he said a very interesting thing. I thought it was wonderful. He said, "Look, he's a professor." He said, "My young students, and he's a college professor. My young students are not interested in the old traditional, Sanskrit sage meditating in the mountaintop kind of stuff. They're looking for the modern way to get to that place that whole tradition was back then, but they don't want to do that stuff. They're not interested in that. So I find it interesting that the souls have come onto the planet that have transcended that whole thing that's been around for thousands of years, you know, going back to the rishis, back with the Upanishads. And I guess you're part of that whole new stream of consciousness that you found new ways to express it.
Yeah, Byron Katie is a great example. She was a huge influence on me. And I mean, she was just a real estate person, really miserable in deep depression. And lo and behold, she discovered what she was, and her life changed around. And now she does a very practical inquiry. Anybody can do it. You don't have to be on any spiritual path or do any meditation. And I mean, she sees the beauty equally in litter on the road as birds in a gorgeous garden.
That's awesome. I like that thing around your neck. Is that what is that?
This is dichroic glass. It's a handmade thing. It was given to me by that person I was engaged to, actually. Yeah, I have his art throughout. We have his art throughout our apartment. It's gorgeous art. He's really, well, he was. He's passed on now, but
That was Park.
yes, that was
Now I got it tied because I've seen the art in your apartment and I know it was Parks, but I did never connected Park with you in that way. Oh, now it's all falling into place. That's interesting. As long as I'm talking, let me say this. You know, Byron Katie, yeah. Was very influential on me too with what she calls the work, and in this book you have some quotes from Byron Katie. I just picked out one here just randomly. This is from Byron Katie. Everything happens for you, not to you. And I think this whole thing today has all of you've been expressing that beautifully, that what happened, no, it didn't happen to you, it happened for you. And as long as we're going, let me just go back to the caning, because I'm sure you obviously you see that in the same way. But now with the caning experience, because you mentioned you had that dream, that dream of anger where you were more angry than ever, and you had something you took away from that. Now with the caning experience, it was complete because whoever was caning you felt complete. You felt totally raw. You were complete. Was there any takeaway from that?
yes, yes. Well, I was able to see that there was a very distinct difference between the physical pain and the suffering that my thoughts were causing. I mean, when I was going through what's wrong with me? I'm ashamed of myself. Why am I doing this? Why, how, is there something bad here or something bad out there? I was adding on so much suffering. It was so much more suffering. And then when there was the release of getting present, there was just the pure physical pain. And it was totally different, completely different. And I feel like it gave me authority in being able to speak to the fact that physical pain is not suffering.
That suffering is an add-on, is a story about the pain. So that's what yeah, that's what I was looking for, just the way you expressed it, because it's saying like there had to be something there, because if everything happens for you, right, not to you. So some people say that happened to you, or no, it happened for you, so that you could make that distinction between physical pain and the stories that we have going on in mind, which causes suffering. Because in other words, physical pain is one thing, suffering is a whole add-on, and that's why they say, pain maybe not optional, suffering is optional. If you stop telling yourself all the stories around the pain and just like do what you did, experience the pain fully and completely, and being complete with that. That's so great. I'm glad this came out.
What matters is knowing that there is no mistake. Everything you are doing right now, everything you are experiencing, everything you are being is right. And within that is the complete natural wholeness. And once we get to taste that and savor it, it's amazing how much less pain we'll cause ourselves.
So in the landmark forum, your kind of breakthrough was the realization that you are not your thoughts, and that the thoughts really had nothing to do with reality. They were just stories about what, okay. And then you indicated that your awakening to who you really are, came later. So at what point was there an occasion? Were you doing another like workshoppy thing, or was it just like walking in the woods? What was the occasion for you now waking up to who you are?
So that was at the retreat where I
Oh,
quit
Adi
having.
Ashanti. Okay,
Yeah.
so that happened after Landmark.
Yes.
Okay, so you had the Landmark, and then you had the Adi. Yeah, the Adi. So yes, I got you. I got you totally at the because I had a very similar thing happen to me, the same kind of thing. So I got you totally with you're finally giving up and letting it go and being open to the understanding then dawning. Okay, then my next question is, so if I could summarize this whole thing, right? It's going to be about, I would title this podcast "Knowing What We Are." So Lisa, let me just ask you something. What are you?
Yes. There's one energy that is the motor of the whole universe. That is flowing into this mind body and into every mind body. It is one dance choreographed perfectly. And this is just going through those experiences. That is even back at the soul level. So this one dance emerged in a soul experience, and the soul experience has gone through its various experiences, but it's just this one movement from this all that we are. And any time we think, but if I were it all the way, I would be more blank. That is the most painful thought we can have, because this that we are is so alive. It's pure love. It's pure fullness. It doesn't have any gap. There's nothing missing. And so when we're fully knowing that, then there's just no suffering. But the moment we have the thought, yeah, but if I were enlightened, I would be more blank. That's it. That's the thought of suffering, really. Or if I were more successful, or if I were more, you could put anything on there, you know, I wouldn't be afraid of that, or I would be safe from this ever happening. That's, but to let go of that thought is not something you can just pull away. For me, fortunately, I had that great experience where it was completely gone. And then when it kind of crept in as just a thought, I could look at it and see what would make it dissolve. And it's like a house of cards. You just keep pulling out the cards and then the house falls down. So my first book is how to pull out the cards. So you just look, what is the thought I'm believing now more than what I am wants this right now? What's the thought that I'm believing? And as you dismantle it, you come back into, oh my gosh, this that I am wants it just like this. And after doing, I went through my whole life, went through all the things I thought shouldn't have happened to me. And I just went through every single one of them to see, was there really anything that shouldn't have happened to me? No, every single one of them. I remember the moment where I was looking at the kinds of books, kinds of movies I tended to like at that point, and they were books kind of like Jane Eyre, which are all about somebody who's in this tight, constricted, rule-bound place who finally comes out into freedom. And then I thought, oh my gosh, that's my life. I've been living my favorite book, my favorite movie. And then I got, oh yeah, I wanted it exactly like this.
And that's because, once again, Byron Katie, everything happens for you, not to you. That's the big shift. I got to say this because what you're saying reminds me of what Ramana Maharshi said to his disciples, because they're there fawning and scraping and everything, hoping for some crumbs to fall from the spiritual table. And he said the only difference, and this is what you were getting at, the only difference between me, Ramana Maharshi, and you, the supplicant, is that I don't have the thought I am I don't have the thought I am not realized. So that's what you're saying, because it's the thought that causes suffering. Oh, I'm not enlightened. Oh, when I get to the higher plane, then blah blah. All these thoughts. That's the suffering. So Ramana and you no longer have those self-limiting thoughts, and so there you can be open to this is happening now. Why? Because life wants it to happen just this way, and so it's beautiful. So there's no hope for tomorrow because who needs it? And there's no regret for the past because who needs it? Because this is this is it, or this too is Brahman, as you were alluding to. So great stuff. Love it.
The way you expressed it was both simplistic and exquisite. And it turns out that simplicity is the most exquisite thing there is.
Great way to put it. And some people think, well, then if I just think everything's right, I'm just going to kind of do nothing. But actually, I've discovered the opposite because it's all this self-consciousness that's constantly evaluating, should I do that? Is this the right thing to do? And that is a great way. Once that's gone and there's just the aliveness, then any desire coming up, there's room for it. There's a energy for it. There's expression for it. It's just there's no filter. So you get to just flow. It's not a static place at all. It's funny, you'd think with no preferences, there would be nothing happening. But there was an inner desire that wanted that experience too. So, there were times I was so upset, so discouraged, so distraught, and I would do painful things, whatever things I was doing. Um, and so yes, they were because of that belief, but what I am wanted to have the experience of having that belief and then the consequences of that belief and then the letting go of that belief. So you can say, okay, now I'm doing something that's against my nature. Well, not ever. It's our nature that wants to do something against its nature to have the falling away of that which is against its nature. So you're never outside of your nature. But there is this inner movement that seems to move towards more love, more compassion, more peace. That does seem to be, if you look at the long-term trajectory, that seems to be what happens. So that seems to be our nature. But there's no principle about even that. It turns out that is our inner desire. Oh, wow, I just noticed. There is that within me that wants to be natural. Huh. I don't have to even make it a should. I just connect into that, which is that inner desire. We don't have to arrive, we don't have to grow, we don't have to mature. It's like an apple tree is going to bear fruit. The apple tree doesn't have to, I gotta get an apple out. No. And it's all inevitable. It's really inevitable.
Yeah. Yeah.
What we are is just blossoming and blossoming. And if you look, I mean, really, the only people who are trying to get us to believe otherwise are the people who have financial gain. They've got financial gain to get us to think that there's so many problems. But really, if you just look and interact with people, if I fall down, you know how many people run over to help me?
Oh, yeah.
Anywhere in the world. That's just our nature. It's like we are good. We're in great shape. It's
So,
inevitable.
did you have a good time?
I had a blast. It's so easy being with you guys.
Thank you.
you're both so natural and you're really complimentary for each other. It's really great. I mean,
Thank you.
there's the gut energy, there's the heart energy. It's fantastic.
Wow. Cool. Well, thank you very much. Thank you
Um,
very much.
yeah,
It's
thank
been
you.
wonderful.
Yeah, I really enjoyed you guys a lot.
Lisa
So,
Carillo, An Unprincipled Life, Living from the Unknown. And listen, I can say, based on my own experience, living from the unknown is a hell of a lot more fun than living from principles and cautions and shoulds and contraction. So buy the book, and you too can have fun. It's
and
been fun.
yeah,
And
we'll see you in the ethers, I guess, huh?
And that BDSM story, I hadn't shared that ever before publicly.
what hadn't you shared?
The BDSM story.
Oh, that's great. And I think that's really great. No, I think it's a great story because it shows people that let's get off this is spiritual, this isn't spiritual. And it's all about experience and what life wants us to experience. And so because part of I have a little axe to grind. Stefan has his own axe. I have my axe. I want to debunk this whole notion of spirituality, what's spiritual and what's exalted and all these experiences and stuff. And as you say, doesn't mean shit because it's not about any particular experience. It's about experience itself and not this thing, that thing, the other thing. And that's why I'm glad you mentioned Byron Katie, because she said she would find delight in garbage on the side of the road as a beautiful sunset. See, to the awakened person, it's kind of all the same. I mean, yes, you might prefer to look at a sunset, but you realize it's all the same. It's not this is good, this is bad. So I think you really brought that out today in a very, very powerful. You brought out a lot of things today, were very, very powerful. And people, I absolutely instinctually know that people watching this podcast are going to get so much from your, from the way you elucidated certain things very powerfully. So thanks a million.
Ah,
and I'll just say there's so much joy in your face that how could they not be attracted to your words? So, that was awesome, man. Really. Yep. Thank you.
well, thank you guys. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. You were great. You made my day.